Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I want to talk about one of the key categories that shapes and defines Jewish identity, has defined it and continues to define it. It continues to be one of the central categories we talk about when we talk about who is a Jew, and that is the category of chosenness. Chosenness has both positive dimensions to it. It is exciting on the one hand, and it's a very suspicious category at the same time. It's very ambivalent. On the one hand, when 95% of North American Jews say they're proud to be Jewish, which is a remarkable, remarkable statistic, and every time statisticians put forth various studies of the Jewish community, every single Jewish organization picks one question from which they will build a whole theory. So why should I be any different? I won't build a theory. I'll just comment that it's strange. 40% of the Jewish people define themselves as having no religion. And let's assume that there is a profound Protestant bias to a definition of religion pertaining particularly to issues of faith and ritual and synagogue affiliation. But still 95%, like Jews don't agree on anything. 95% of Jews wouldn't agree that today's Wednesday. Think about it. 95% of Jews say they're proud to be Jewish. One of the reasons, one of the places where this pride comes from a category which has accompanied us from the first moment that the first Jew walks in the world. And that is the category of chosenness. Now, as we have been replaced in the minds of others who say, I am now the chosen one, we began to realize that chosenness has a two-edged sword. Chosenness puts you too much out there. You know what I mean? Maybe if I wouldn't be chosen so much, not everybody would want to kill me that often. Because they want to show, listen, I'm the chosen one. And as we began to, in Western civilization, begin to understand the inalienable rights of all human beings and with that, core principles of equality, there's something about chosenness that doesn't seem to fit. Like, what does it mean that you're chosen? What is that? When you say you're chosen, what does it mean about you? What does it mean about other people? And so there's a whole spectrum of opinions which we give to and we offer to what chosenness means. There's different ways that we sing the Kiddush. Kivanu v'acharta v'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim. You know that tune? For you, Kiva, because you have chosen us, and you have sanctified us from all the nations of the world. So there's all these options. So some people sing that, and as long as it's in Hebrew and most people don't know what they're singing, no problem. No problem. I can't tell you how many people hate the category of chosenness and sing that tune all the time. What's the problem? It's Hebrew. It's just words. I say a lot of words which I don't understand, so there's a few more words that I don't understand. That doesn't seem to bother me that much. Then other people, they have kivano v'charta v'otanu kidashta im kol ha'amim, not mi kol ha'amim, but im kol ha'amim, which those who aren't fluent in Hebrew won't get exactly excited about, but it actually makes a huge difference. Because one says you have chosen us from amongst all the nations of the world, and the other one says you've chosen us together with all the nations of the world. My own version, I do kivanu v'charta v'otanu kidashta la 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 la. That's my Kiddush. See, because I don't want to say im, because I want to leave it there. I don't want to make it really clear what I'm rejecting. I want to make sure that there's a la 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 there. It's sitting there. There was a notion that chosenness makes me special and better that to be chosen means, in some sense, to say that you are better. And I want to sort of put it there because I know one of the interesting and important things is that when you inherit a 3,000-year-old tradition, if you make a change from in kol ha'amim instead of mikol ha'amim, the old ideology is going to remain. It takes a long time to uproot 3,000-year-old traditions. They don't get removed so quickly. You have to recognize that they're there. You have to give them their space, and then you have to work very hard to offer a different alternative. So regardless of whether you say Kiddush or how you say Kiddush, there is embedded in who we are some sense of chosenness. What does it mean? Is one question. But that to be chosen is an integral part of Jewish identity cannot be questioned. And therefore, it's a category that it behooves us well to study a little more carefully. And in particular, what happens when 80 to 90% of the Jewish world, half who live in Israel and half who live in North America, have two very different notions of what this category means? Or in particular, have two very different notions of the consequences of this category. Because I want to speak about the consequences of this category today. In particular, the consequences of a relationship. Once I have a Jewish identity, what is my relationship to the world? How do I see the world around me? How do I think about the world? What place do they have within my consciousness? How do I see them? And how does God see them? And what happens if Israel and world Jewry are moving in dramatically different trajectories? Trajectories that might, in theory, or in practice actually, be creating two dramatically different Judaisms, far different and far more dramatic than the differences between Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform. And then the issues of how we stay united as one people becomes particularly challenging when chosenness might be creating two very different denominations in Jewish life. And so let's begin. The Lord said to Abram, "Go forth from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing." God says to Abraham, the first thing that a Jew does, the first thing that defines Jewish life is to separate yourself from the world around you. Go forth from your native land, from your father's house. Go forth from your family, break. In essence, walk away. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to be separated from everything around you. And I need you to break with your past. And I need you to break with your family. I need you to break with your homeland. Those things that inherently seem to be that which are which you can never be disconnected from. They are yours regardless of where you are. Here, God says, we're about to embark on a journey together. And that journey begins with you walking away from the world. In many ways, you becoming a stranger to the world. Now, being a stranger is one of the most precarious positions because there's no one who has your back. There's no one who's going to look out for you. There's no one who's going to protect you if somebody wants to do you harm. And God says, don't worry. While you're going to be a stranger to the world, you're going to be married to me. And by being married to me, I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great. I have your back. You and I, we're going to be doing something separate. We're going to be doing something distinct. And the first thing you need to do is you have to make a choice. Are you with me or are you with them? Please remember this. Actually, if you want to, we're going to come back to it, but let's just look at it for a second now. Look on source 3 from the Tanaic Midrash on the book of Leviticus. God says, I have separated you from the people, that you shall be mine. If you are separated from the nations, lo, you are for my name. And if not, lo, you belong to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylonia, and his associates. Decide. Who do you want to be with? You want to be at one with the world, in which their kings are your kings, their people are your people, their homelands are your homelands? Or are you willing to take a leap into strangeness, and to enter into a covenantal marriage of chosenness with me, God? This is the first moment of Lech Lecha. And then 5 words, 6 in English. And you shall be a blessing. What does "and you shall be a blessing" mean? At least on the surface, that world which you've disassociated from, that world which you now have you've become a stranger to, and now you are a lover of God, all of a sudden returns, where the scripture says you're going to be a blessing. A blessing to whom? Genesis 12, however, has a very particular interpretation to what "you shall be a blessing" means and what chosenness means. What does it mean, Yeshua, you shall be a blessing? I will bless those who bless you, and curse him that curses you, and all the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you. What does it mean that you're going to be a blessing? According to Genesis 12, you shall be a blessing means that everybody in the world will be blessed dependent on how they treat you. This moment when I asked you to be a stranger to the world, I am now declaring that in essence, I, God, am a stranger to the world. From this moment on, I am going to be just like the average North American Jew when they read the New York Times. I open up the New York Times, and the first thing I do, I look at the headlines, and then I quickly look and see, is there anything on Israel? If there isn't, now we can go. We have decisions. We can go to the editorial, we could go to sports, we could go to obituary. Life's good because we have all these choices. But beforehand, the first choice, I wake up in the morning and I ask one question and one question only. Is it good for the Jews or is it not good for the Jews? What is good for the Jews? And God says, I want you to know, if you walk away from the world and you choose to walk with me, I choose you, and by choosing you, I delegate all of the world to a secondary status. They will get a blessing, absolutely, but on one condition. And that is that they bless you. And if they don't bless you and they try to curse you, I will curse them. This is one very, very prominent, clear reading and clear meaning of what chosenness means. And it gets picked up. Please turn to Deuteronomy source 2. For your own sake, God says, therefore, be most careful, since you saw no shape when the Lord your God spoke to you at Horeb, that's Mount Sinai out of the fire. The moment when God descends on Mount Sinai and gives the Torah is a moment in which there is a physical association with God, and it would be natural to assume that God has a body, and the Bible says, whoa, we're okay with this moment of revelation, but don't assume that this moment of revelation created a physical form for God. No, do not think you saw no shape, not to act wickedly and make for yourself a sculptured image in any likeness whatever, the form of a man or a woman, the form of a beast on earth, the form of any winged bird that flies in the sky, the form of anything that creeps on the ground, the form of any fish that is in the water below the earth. I caught all the forms on the earth, right? Now let me go elsewhere. And when you look up to the sky and behold the sun and the moon and the stars, the whole heavenly host, you must not be lured into bowing down to them or serving them. None of them. No form that you look to the left, to the right, up, down. Any form you see, that was not a form that you could associate with me. Those forms that you're going to see, those stars in the heaven, these the Lord your God allotted to other people everywhere under heaven. But you, the Lord took and brought out of Egypt, that iron blast furnace, to be his very own people, as is now the case. Idolatry in our tradition is called, in Hebrew, it's called avodah zarah. Literally, foreign worship. And as Moshe Halbertal and Avishai Margalit explain in one of the explanations in their phenomenal book on idolatry, idolatry is foreign worship. It's foreign worship for Jews. In many ways, monotheism is idolatry for non-Jews. Because God, at the moment of election, when I choose you in Egypt, God says, I gave all the idols, all the other gods to them. You are mine. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you, because you and I have a monogamous marriage. And I, the God of the earth, I'm choosing only you. Genesis 12, let's go back. From a literary perspective, is an absolutely fascinating chapter. And what makes it so fascinating is that the chapter itself interprets its own categories. First, it says, I want you to, as students of Torah, where the ideas are here, but also just get a chance to breathe in the process. I will make of you a blessing, and the next verse now says, let me explain to you what it means. I will bless those who bless you. It's almost the chapter is doing its own midrash on itself, its own commentary on itself. What does it mean that I will bless you? It means I will bless those, you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And then Genesis 12 tells two stories which exemplify this precise idea. So Abraham went forth as the Lord had commanded him. He chooses. I am choosing to be the chosen one. And from that moment on, chosenness is indigenous to Jewish identity. Abraham went forth as the Lord had commanded him, and Lot went with him. Abraham was 75 years old when he left Haran. Abraham took his wife Sarai and his brother's son Lot and all the wealth that they had amassed and the persons that they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. They come. When they arrived in the Canaan, Abraham passes through the land as far as the site of Shechem, as the terebinth of Moreh. And the Canaanites were then in the land. That's nice. Because God says, go to the land that I will show you, and I'll make of you a great nation. That's okay. And so he goes to Canaan, and it just so happens that the Canaanites are in the land of Canaan. The Lord appeared to Abraham and said, I will assign this land to your heirs. Look at the juxtaposition. The Canaanites were then in the land, and the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, I will assign this land to your heirs. We didn't go to a land without a people. We went to a land which was filled with a people. And the text precisely by not making anything of it, is explaining to you the consequences of chosenness. The consequences of getting up or going to sleep in the morning, asking a question, what's good for the Jews or what's not good for the Jews. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. It's actually very simple. The Canaanite is now in the land, and I'm giving it to you. Why? Because they have become transparent. Chosenness transparentizes everyone else who is not chosen, and they have mass. They become seen only to the extent that it is good for the Jews. And if it's not, they retain their transparent status. The text then continues. Notice the silence in the room. It's a silence of embarrassment. It's a silence of wondering. Is this Judaism? Ladies and gentlemen, the last time I checked, Genesis 12 is part of Judaism. But don't worry. Just hold on, but feel uncomfortable. Because that discomfort is necessary for us to recognize who we are and the complexity of the debate around Jewish identity in contemporary Jewish life. Genesis 12 then continues. Abraham moves around, offers a little altar there, and then there was a famine in the land. This is strange. God says, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you, and all of a sudden there's a famine in the land. Is God testing Abraham as God seems wont to do all the time? Very many commentaries say yes. And Abraham went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. And as he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, now I know what a beautiful, atayadati, now I know what a beautiful woman you are. And if the Egyptians see you and think she is my wife, they will kill me and let you live. Please, come together with me back to Canaan, so that you and I may live together. Where thou dost go, I will go. Your people are my people. God will look out for us. Do you know how many times I read this verse and I wish? Like there's advantages to the Kindle version. You know, it's like you could just sort of edit it and fix it. No, it's like the Wikipedia version of the Bible. In what is clearly not one of Abraham's finest moments. He says, please say that you're my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that I may remain alive thanks to you. Let's just, this marriage was a really nice thing. I really love you. And now that I know what a beautiful woman you are, it seems really quite a shame. But at the end of the day, I love myself better. I really love myself. And I'm really important to me. And so could you please do me a favor and recognize that not only am I important to me, could I also be important to you? And are you willing to please sacrifice yourself and enter the harem of Pharaoh so that, because I really don't want to be hungry right now. And the word of the Lord came down to Abraham and said, how dare you offer your wife as a sacrifice to Pharaoh? No, but there seems to be silence. And instead, Pharaoh's courtiers saw her and praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's palace. And because of her, it went well with Abraham. He acquired sheep and oxes and asses and male and female slaves, she-asses and camels and lions and bears. Oh my! But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his household with mighty plagues on account of Sarai, the wife of Abraham. Pharaoh sent for Abraham and said, what is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I should take her as my wife? Now here is your wife, take her and be gone. And Pharaoh put him in charge, and they sent him off with his wife and all that he possessed. And Abraham leaves Egypt with great wealth and prosperity. The first Exodus from Egypt story is in Genesis 12, not in Exodus. And Abraham goes down to Egypt and confronts the most powerful king of the world. But he's the most powerful king in the world, not the most powerful king in the universe, because he comes up against the God of creation who has chosen Abraham. And Genesis 12 tells you, I don't care how obnoxious you are. I don't care how debased you are. I don't care how unchivalrous you are. There is one thing that you remain, and that is you remain my chosen one. And if you go down to Egypt and someone tries to harm you, even if you are at fault, even if you should have stayed in the land of Canaan, which I promised to you, even if you should have turned around and embraced your wife and embraced your destiny and turned to me, I told you I have your back. Even if you forget me, you could forget me. I'm not forgetting you, because now you are the chosen one, and I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And if the king of Egypt, in Egypt, tries to curse you, tries to harm you, his destiny will be simple. He will be harmed and you will prosper. Genesis 12 gives one of the most powerful, coherent stories about what does chosenness mean. It is a chapter which explains you shall be a blessing, as I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you, and immediately follows up with two stories which exemplify this precise idea. This idea of chosenness is the dominant idea of chosenness in the whole Bible. And I would actually, and I will talk a little bit later, it actually becomes the dominant theory of chosenness in most of Jewish literature throughout the Middle Ages till the modern era. This is the dominant theory of chosenness for the first 2,000 years of Judaism. And if you look in the Bible, you will notice that the world basically disappears from Genesis 12 and onward. The non-Jewish world, there is almost no story of God having a relationship with the world. Almost no story of God's relationship to the world until we get to the end of days. And we have some eschatological prophecies of Isaiah and Amos, etc. The world basically is removed. If a world comes in, they enter the conversation merely by virtue of the fact that they are somehow intersecting with the Jewish people. The world has a place in our narrative to the extent that it touches the Jewish narrative. They don't have an independent place in the Jewish Bible. And in this reading, Genesis 12 is a rejection of Genesis 1 through Genesis 11. And according to this, God is indeed the creator of the world. But the story goes that God tries to create a world, and that world is corrupt. And ultimately, chosenness is God's decision to separate God's self from the world and to enter into a particular relationship with one people over all others. This idea gets translated as well into Jewish law. Please turn I see they made a mistake here. Okay. Go back, please, to source 3. I have separated you from the people that you should be mine. If you are separated from the nations, lo, you are for my name. And if not, lo, you belong to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylonia and his associates. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah said, how do we know that someone should not say, I do not want to wear clothing of mixed fibers? I don't want to wear pork. I don't want to have incestual sexual relationships. Rather, a person should say, I want to wear mixed fiber. I want to eat pork. I want to have incestuous relationships. But what can I do? For my Father in heaven has made a decree for me. So Scripture says, I have separated you from the peoples, that you shall be mine. The purpose of Jewish law, the purpose of all the details, is not to create a system that you identify with. It's not to create a system of meaning. Keep kosher because you are what you eat. Keep kosher because you want to be a salmon who flows against the stream. Don't eat don't eat wolves and eagles because we're not people. We don't like to kill. Be like the nice cow who just grazes on. We're the grazers. You are what you eat, and therefore keep kosher because it will make you a more refined human being. What are you talking about? I want you to want to eat pork. I want you to chalish for lobster. I want you to salivate every single time you see it. And then I want you not to eat it. Because when you don't eat it, you're God's. And the purpose of Jewish law is to separate you from the world. And that's why we need 613 commandments, because we need lots and lots and lots of opportunities on an ongoing basis for you to dedicate yourself to the God who marries you and whom together you have an exceptional and unique and profoundly separate relationship. That is one idea of chosenness. The second idea of chosenness, a very different one, is hinted at in Exodus 19 on source 6. God says to Moses goes up to God, the Lord called him from the mountain on page 4, saying, thus shall you say to the house of Jacob and declare to the children of Israel, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to me. You have seen the consequence of my chosenness. You have seen what it means when I say I will bless those who will bless you and curse those who curse you. You will see what it means when I said you will be a great and prosperous nation. You have defeated Pharaoh. With me, you are victorious. Now then, God says, if you will obey me faithfully and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possessions amongst all the people. You're going to be special unto me. Indeed, all the earth is mine, and there is a profound paradox here. A profound paradox. I am the God of the world, but I am picking only you. And then a very fascinating verse, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Now, a holy nation means, in our tradition, the word holy means separate. To be holy means to be separate. And that's why we're not talking about this today. One of the ideas, when the Temple Mount is declared to be holy, it actually means that you as a human being can possess it. So the whole notion of nations trying to possess holiness is a contradiction in terms. Holiness means it's other than you. And that's why under Jewish law, the laws of the Temple Mount, the holier something becomes, it gets expressed under Jewish law by who can't go up there. Not who owns it, but who can't go there. You're going to be my holy people, mine. But then another term is introduced, and that is the term a kingdom of priests. Now, can you be a priest if there isn't a people who you serve. What does kingdom of priests mean here? It could mean that God is saying, you are going to be a kingdom of priests in the sense that there's going to be a higher level of holiness and a higher level of access for every single one of you to me. The other possibility is that if you are a kingdom of priests, you actually could only be a kingdom of priests if you live in the midst of the world. With that, we're now ready to turn to Genesis 18. Genesis 18 has and debates the meaning of you shall be a blessing with Genesis 12. Genesis 18 offers a radically different interpretation of what you shall be a blessing means and what chosenness means in our tradition. What is the consequence of chosenness? What does it mean when you become chosen? For what did I say to you? Walk away from the world. Did I say to you, walk away from the world because I want you only to myself, and therefore there's a completely zero-sum game? If you're not mine, you're Nebuchadnezzar's. If you're Nebuchadnezzar's, you're not mine. Is that what chosenness means? Genesis 12 says yes. And much of the Jewish tradition says yes. Genesis 18 says, I have a different understanding of chosenness. And it starts with the story of God and God's judgment of the city of Sodom. Now, the mere fact that God is judging the city of Sodom means that God has a relationship with the city of Sodom. That means God, the God of the universe of Genesis 1 through 11, is still actually continuing to be the God of the universe. God in Genesis, the mere fact that the city is deemed to be wicked and needs to be judged, presumes that God hasn't given up on the rest of the world. God is not only thinking in terms of what's good for the Jews or bad for the Jews, God actually continues to have a relationship with the world. One of the interesting things is that from Genesis 18, the only other time in the Bible where God has a relationship with the world directly is in the book of Jonah. From Genesis 18 through Jonah, you can draw a line. But Genesis 18 says that Genesis 1 through Genesis 11 is not dead. It's not over. And God says, actually, not only do I have a relationship with the world, but you who are married to me must also have a relationship to the world. And they offer a different reading of Genesis 12. Come with me. The men set out from there and looked down towards Sodom. Abraham went walking with them to see them off. Now the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Since Abraham is to become a great and populous nation, and all the nations of the earth are to bless themselves by him. Genesis 18 actually requotes half of Genesis 12:1 and half of Genesis 12:3. Takes Genesis 1 and 3, interconnects them together, and says, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Since Abraham is going to become a great and populous nation, and all the nations of the earth are going to bless themselves by him or through him. And through that, Genesis 18 says you don't have a clue what chosenness means. Chosenness doesn't mean I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Chosenness doesn't mean to other the world. Chosenness means that I need for you to have a particular identity, because precisely when you have a particular identity, you stand for something, and what we stand for is a sense of responsibility to the world. I am choosing you in Genesis 12, not to close the story on Genesis 1 through 11, but actually to go back in a different way to Genesis 1 through 11. Now to go back through the window of particularism. Now to go back through the fact that any identity by definition is particular. When you say that you're identifying something, you're seeing it as distinct from everything around it. Now, distinctness does not mean inherently superiority. Distinctness does not mean inherently isolationism and otherness to the world. God says quite to the contrary. I have made of you a great nation, not as a sign that I have your back because you're willing to be the stranger to the world. By making you a great nation, I am giving you the power to impact on this world. I want you, the essence of the covenant is that Genesis 1 through Genesis 11, I tried to rule the world by myself. Didn't work. Now, how do I make this God idea into the world? I am going to do this through a particular people. But if this particular people sees itself as completely isolated from the world, you void the essential purpose of chosenness. God says, I can't destroy the city of Sodom without speaking to Abraham. Because Abraham has a responsibility. All the nations of the world shall bless themselves through him. That means not what's good for the Jews, but rather, my job is to be a blessing to the world. My job is to take responsibility for the world. And God says, that's why I'm speaking to Abraham. Why else would I consult Abraham? According to Genesis 12, number one, I don't care about the city of Sodom. Number two, if I decided to destroy it, Abraham should care even less. The Canaanite is in the land and now it's yours. They have no claim. They have no claim to justice. They have no claim to me. They are transparent. And God says to Abraham, I cannot do anything to the city of Sodom because they are your responsibility, because I have chosen you to be the one through whom the world achieves its blessing. For I have singled him out that he may instruct his children and his posterity to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is just and right, in order that the Lord may bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. Your job, Abraham, in being a blessing is to make sure that justice and righteousness prevails in the world. And you actually even have to protect the world from me. The antithesis of Genesis 12. In Genesis 12, I could do anything I want to do. Genesis 18 says, I, God, and you, Abraham, have a partnership. And we have to make sure that this world is judged through justice and righteousness. We are the protectors of justice and righteousness. And you even have to protect it against me. And maybe I, God, have to protect it against your abuses. And so Genesis 18 offers a dramatically different reading. And we have to wait till Isaiah 49 to hear that voice again. Source 8. Listen, O coastlands, to me, and give heed, O nations afar. The Lord appointed me before I was born. He named me while I was in my mother's womb. This is the moment of election. We're talking about the election of the Jewish people. And now Isaiah is saying, you were elected not in Leviticus, in Genesis 12. You were elected even before you were born. He made my mouth like a sharpened blade. I love this term. Your mouth is like a sharpened blade. Your mouth is a blade because what do I need you to do? Your mouth is an instrument that I need to change. I need you to talk. I need you to spread the good word. I need you to spread my message. He hid me in the shadow of his hand, and he made me like a polished arrow. He concealed me in his quiver. I am God's arrow. I am God's agent, which God is going to shoot into the world so that God's will and God's intent will spread in the world. And he said to me, you are my servant Israel, in whom I glory. It is through you that I find Asher B'chayit Ber. The English is a little off. You are my servant Israel, through whom I become glorified. And I thought, I have labored in vain. spent my strength for empty breath. I'm powerless. God promises in Leviticus, in Genesis, and throughout the Bible that we're going to be a great and prosperous nation, because it's by being a great and prosperous nation that not simply we're going to defend ourselves through the world, but we are going to be a power in the world. We are going to be a power in the world who pursues justice and righteousness. We have a responsibility to the world, but now I'm sitting in the sewer pits of history. Everybody's stepping on me. I can't make, when I'm not in my own home and when I'm powerless and hated and despised, I can't do anything in the world. So here it is, you gave me a mission. Great, I'm an arrow. I'm a broken arrow. You put me in your quiver. That quiver has long been buried. Nobody's bringing forth that arrow to fire. You, God, have gone on. But now my case rests with the Lord. My recompense was in the hands of God. And now the Lord has resolved, he who formed me in the womb to be his servant, to bring Jacob to himself, that Israel may be restored to him. And that I have been honored in the sight of the Lord, my God has been my strength. God, you, and Isaiah is now prophesying in the end of days, that you, Israel, are going to be my servant. I'm returning you back to God. I'm returning you back to power. I'm returning you back to Israel, so that you can again fulfill your task. And then this verse is a verse that all of us have to read over and over again. For he has said, it is too little that you should be my servant, in that I raise up the tribes of Jacob and restore the survivals of Israel. Do you think my agenda in the world is to bring you back to Israel? That's it. God says it's too little. Nakel beinai. It's like, that's it. You think I, the God of the universe, I wake up in the morning and want to figure out, is it good for the Jews or bad for the Jews? Okay, the Jews are in a little trouble now. Let me change all of history to bring the Jews back. Isaiah is saying, you think that's all I wanted to do? That's it? I'm done? Helping the Jews is my job in the world. I wake up in the morning and say what's good for the Jews. That's it? You think I'm a Genesis 12 Jew, Isaiah? God says in the words of Isaiah. You think Genesis 12 encapsulates all that God, the creator of the universe, is going to do on earth? He says, no. I will also make you a light of nations, that my salvation may reach the end of the earth. Chosenness, particularity, is for a purpose. I, God, have chosen many people. As Amos says, to me, O Israelites, you're just like the Ethiopians. True, I brought Israel up from the land of Egypt, but also the Philistines from Kaphtor and the Arameans from Kir. I have a lot of people who I take care of. Please remember, Genesis 12 doesn't erase Genesis 1 through 11. Quite to the contrary. The purpose of a people seeing themselves as chosen is not to be othered and isolated from the world, but it is precisely through a particular identity that certain forms and values and principles could be planted in that people, and that they could become the carrier of them. We don't believe in caring from the world through some universalist identity. A universalist consciousness is grounded in a particular identity which gives you the values which define your mission to the world. And to be chosen is to recognize that you must be a light unto the nations. And so we have a choice. We have a profound narrative of chosenness is a exclusive marriage to God in which the world is othered to us. And we have a narrative of chosenness in which the purpose of chosenness is to be responsible for the world. Is to take all the gifts, all the skills, all the values that you know and that you've inherited, and let every nation in the world believe that they are chosen and begin a competition. Who is serving the world better? Who is more of a light and who is not? Now, to conclude, What does this mean? And why is this conversation so important? Why does the world disappear in our Bible? Why does it disappear? According to Genesis 12, it disappears because God and the Jews don't care about anybody but the Jews. According to Genesis 18, it disappears because this is our Bible. I'm just telling you, this is just the story of our relationship. It's creating this particular identity, and other people have their own Bible. Just like other people in the book of Amos have their own Exodus stories, they have their own Bibles. And everybody with their own Bible has to carry their Bible and carry its content and now go on to a mission to the world. But one of the interesting things about Isaiah 49 is that if you look in Isaiah 49, there is a term here used, "You are my servant." And wherever Isaiah uses the word servant of God, the Jewish people read that as applying to the Jewish people. Christianity reads it as applying to Jesus Christ. That my salvation in Hebrew is Yeshuati. Yeshua is Jesus. One of the interesting things that happen is that this idea of light unto the nations becomes for close to 2,000 years a Christian idea instead of a Jewish idea. And there's many cases where we say that's Christianity and not Judaism. Why did this become a Christian idea? Once the Jewish people confront Rome and lose, and once Christianity and Islam continuing afterwards ascend into the center of world history, the fundamental experience of Jews is one of being othered by the world. This same people which feels chosen, regardless of whether we were Genesis 12 or Genesis 18, we experience the world as othering us. We became the non-Christian. We became the non-Muslim. We become the citizenless people of history. We who started, in some sense, by othering the world, one of the paradoxes is that other monotheistic traditions became Christians and Muslims in accordance with Genesis 12. Everybody, monotheism becomes a Genesis 12 religion, in which the question is, God loves me best. And part of the way in which I show that God loves me best is I transparentize everyone else. And that includes whom? The Jews. Christians could transparentize Muslims and Jews. Muslims can transparentize Christians and Jews. Christians, Protestants can transparentize Catholics, etc., etc., etc. Because God, the meaning of election is that God has an exclusive relationship. And one of the saddest verses in the whole Bible is when the righteous Jew, Asa, of the seed of Abraham, turns to his father Isaac and says, Abba, do you have a blessing for me? And his Abba says to him, no. I gave it all to Jacob. And the idea is that blessing from God is a scarce commodity. And every monotheistic tradition starts fighting for who owns that blessing and starts creating a world of I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. By Genesis 12's dominance within the categories of monotheism in a certain sense, with Christianity accepting light unto the nations exclusively, and so to Islam, to the extent that I have a mission to convert the world, but I don't have a mission to love the world as another. I love the other to the extent that I could make them me, but I don't love the other in their otherness. We experience that otherness. A people who experiences otherness, being othered and being attacked, is a people which has great difficulty believing that it is their responsibility to be a light unto the nations. Why would I want to be a light unto the nations who want to kill me? What do I care about the nations of the world? And Genesis 12 comes back into Jewish discourse throughout diasporic life because it is the chapter of comfort. Because Genesis 18 says, I love you on condition that you serve as a mission, be a light unto the nations. Genesis 12 says, I love you regardless. I know Christianity is claiming to be the new Jews, and I know Islam is claiming to be the new ones whom God loves more than others. But it is impossible because Genesis 12 could never be supplanted. And then we have to figure out why it is that there's such a big gap between I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you and our reality. Okay, so for that we have the book of Job. That's what you love me so much, please don't love me so much, but yes, love me, but why isn't it expressed a little bit in history? But it's very, very difficult for Jews and for our tradition to be Genesis 18 and Isaiah 49 in the midst of persecution and anti-Semitism. Persecution and anti-Semitism makes it very, very natural for you to feel, I frankly a plague on all of your houses. And that's why we open in our Seder, when we pray for redemption, we finish our Seder with, God, pour your wrath out on all those SOBs who are walking around this world because all they're doing is trying to hurt me. I frankly don't give an bleep about them. And it's profoundly natural. Why should I care about them? Why should I care? They want to kill me. The story begins to change in the 19th century with emancipation. As the Jews for the first time begin to feel that the nations of the world are going to accept us. And so immediately Reformed Judaism, for example, takes out of the Siddur all messianic prayers which speak about our returning to otherness in Israel. Because now we're at home. What we have to realize is that one of the most fascinating and important distinctions in Jewish life today is between those Jews who experience being othered from those Jews who feel that they are at one with the world. This has nothing to do with your theology. This has nothing to do with your denomination. It has to do with the political reality in which you live. Zionism combined Genesis 12 and Genesis 18. Part of Zionism was a belief that our job is to create here in Israel a place where finally Jews could live. How? By simply being separated from all of them who want to kill us all the time. And the second idea of Zionism was that we're going to create here an exceptional society which will be a light and a gift to the world. But the reality of living in the Middle East is a reality of feeling that somebody wants to kill you. Personally, you. And when you walk in the streets in Israel, you feel that there is somebody who wants to kill you. And I'm not getting into left-wing, right-wing politics as there's something you can do about it or not do about it. There is not a single person in Israel who either in their family or in their immediate smallest little circle doesn't know somebody who was killed by terror, someone who was injured by terror, not one person. And one of the remarkable things that terror could do is that it doesn't have to reach everyone, but it makes you feel the experience of being targeted. One of the remarkable features of North American Jewish life is that, and there's difference in generations, is that America by and large is a place where Jews do not feel targeted. They don't feel targeted. They feel safe. One of the great challenges that we face right now is how, and is it even conceivable, to speak in terms of Genesis 18 in the contemporary political reality of Israel. And what happens when half the Jewish world are living in one experience, in many ways in an eschatological end of days, in which being a light unto the nations makes a lot of sense. That's what America's about. The unique experience of America is to be a beloved minority so that our core identity, what does it mean to be chosen? It means that we are going to be the best Americans that have ever been. I am going to be, and I am going to show that there is no space between being a Jew and being an American, because my responsibility as a Jew, my chosenness, is not my sense of superiority and separation, but it is to embrace the world, to serve the world, to be a part of it, and to improve it. And Genesis 18 has a framework on which to grow. And what happens when there is another reality? Another profoundly different psychological reality in which Genesis 18 seems insane. And actually, you turn back to Genesis 12 as your comfort. They all hate me anyway. They hate me. What, I'm going to do something to make them like me? They don't like me anyway. They hated me beforehand. And otherness becomes an integral part of your identity. Our tradition has Genesis 12 and Genesis 18. Our tradition understands chosenness as otherness and as exceptionalism, as an act of separation from the world, as an act of joining the world. It is two different readings of what does it mean to be a Jew. What does a Jewish life entail? When I say I am a Jew, what are the obligations that come and are consequent from that? We have both. At different points in our history, different chapters prevailed. As is always the case when we have that diversity, it's our responsibility to choose. Now, there is no doubt that you can't be a Genesis 18 Jew without some sense of particularity. But can we walk through history othering the world and not feeling a sense of responsibility for them? There was a time before we had notions of inalienable human rights where discrimination between people was plausible and coherent. Not any longer. Our challenge today is how do we maintain our particular identity and give meaning and content to what it means to be a Genesis 18 Jew. Our second challenge is how do we understand the complexity and the difference of the political life of half the Jewish people who live here as distinct of half of the Jewish people who live in America? And how do we create a conversation where we move forward? We're not going to meet again around Genesis 12. And I would suggest to you that it's not worthy that we meet again around Genesis 12. And if Jewish survival is only possible by being a Genesis 12 Jew, I might choose to diminish the significance of my Jewish identity. Genesis 18 is a worthwhile identity, but it's very hard to live by. The challenge in America is that we are becoming so Genesis 18-y, we're losing our particularity, and if you lose your particularity, you can't be a Genesis 18 Jew either. Genesis 18 is an expression of chosenness. It's not a rejection of chosenness. It's an embracing of particular identity, not an attempt to be at one. It's to be at one with the world in the midst of my particularity. But in Israel, the challenge is, within this political reality, how do we create a discourse around Genesis 18? And I want to tell you, it's becoming very, very difficult. There is almost not a single politician in Israel who speaks in the language of Genesis 18. It's almost not a single. The only group of people who speak in terms of Genesis 18, here, sit in your seats for a moment. There's one group who think in terms of Genesis 18, feel obligated by it, and refuse to live under the notion of Genesis 12, and that's the Israeli army. It's the only group in Israeli society. And that's why the chief of staff, the minister of defense, all say, I am going to try this person who shot a terrorist, a wounded terrorist. Now let's get clear, this wounded terrorist wasn't a lover of the Jews. And part of the natural response he just tried to kill my son, screw him. What do I give a shit about him? He shot him, good luck. That's why 60% say he shouldn't be tried. 60% of Israel say he shouldn't be tried. The politicians say he shouldn't be tried. And the only reason why he's being tried is because of the army. The army refuses to function under Genesis 12 Judaism. It refuses to state that a non-Jewish life is transparent. Now, does that mean that everybody does so? No, I'm talking about the ideology of the idea. Morality of war is about doing the good at the time when your life is in danger. That's what morality of war is about. One of our challenges today, and with this I am truly concluding, is that how do we do Genesis 18 when our life is in danger? How do we find a space for that conversation? I understand Israelis who are becoming fearful. I understand Israelis who are feeling othered by the world and respond by othering it back. But while I can understand it, I don't have to accept it. When we look forward to a partnership between Israeli Jews and North American Jews, how do we come together with a new Genesis 18 conversation? But when you do so, don't do so with naivete. Understand where Israelis are coming from. How do we introduce a language in which all human beings are created in the image of God, and that my job is to be a blessing to the world? Not because I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you, but because Genesis 1, which teaches that all human beings are created in the image of God, has to guide the particular identity of my moral responsibility as a chosen person. To be a Jew is to struggle, to engage, and to be a part of a people who saw themselves as chosen. And right now, not a theoretical decision, but a very real debate, what that consequence is going to be, and whether we are truly going to be a blessing to the world. Thank you. And now we have some time for those who didn't ask a question yesterday. As a general rule, you should know, I call it the two-hand rule. That within a context of a week-long conference with 150 people, twice is a fair amount of time to raise your hands. But yes, please, sir. It's a great, great question. You know what the test is? See, because some of those actions could be done because you have a sense of responsibility for the world, and some of those actions could be public relations actions which aim to serve you. And it depends what you do. And so sometimes you could have a consensus. It's like you could have a consensus in North America today on the importance of treating Israeli Arabs equally. Some people come out of it from a perspective of Genesis 18, and some of it come out of a security perspective that here it is, we have 20% of Israeli society, and if the economic disparity hurts Israel economically, hurts Israel politically, in other words, you could have multiple intent. Your intent could be complex. And you could create a coalition of people who all join together, but it doesn't necessarily express Genesis 18 Judaism. Now, one of the interesting numbers that we don't like to quote is that of every member of the OECD, Israel has the lowest foreign aid percentage of its budget of any country in the OECD. Now, don't quote facts to me because I don't want to hear facts. I remember the hospital in Haiti. So let's assume, forget the fact. As we're going to the world and we're trying to help in Nepal and we're helping Syrian refugees, what are we doing to the 43,000 refugees who are living in Israel? Now, again, the cup, while this bottle is empty, the cup is never full or empty. I'm not saying there is strong forces in Israel fighting for Genesis 18. That it exists at all, in my mind, is remarkable. That it's just remarkable. That we're able to even maintain some form of a debate around military ethics is remarkable because forget about it. What are you talking about? You know, again, you know this, and we've studied in previous years, in Israeli military code of ethics, in the purity of arms section, there is a number of words which says that we must, first of all, it says you have to direct your arms only in self-defense. You're not allowed to kill civilians. And it says you have to do everything in your power to avoid civilian casualties. And the debate in Israel today is to what extent, how many soldiers' deaths should you allow? How many soldiers' deaths should you allow? Or how much danger should you put your soldiers in so as not to cause civilian deaths, casualties? That we haven't just simply, because you have to realize, you just read this, okay, an advisor to Abbas says that if I find an Israeli, I want to slice his throat. Okay, another idiot. And then you can go on. But we know there's actually somebody who means me. Like when he just said that, he was talking about me, not about something, and I know that there's people who are actually going to do that. That you should even care at all is miraculous. My job, none of our societies are simple, and neither is yours now. You know look how easy it is to just add a little fear, a little terrorism, far away from you, or some terrorist acts close by, how easy it is to have a conversation about suspending civil liberties. How easy it is, how quick it was to mainstream otherness into American political discourse as a legal feature of your conversation. Now take that and multiply that 100-fold for 60 years, and you'll have an idea what Israelis are living in. But still, what we tend to do is we tend to not recognize the challenge we face here, and every side collects its facts and does a tremendous disservice to this country. You could go hopping from fact to fact that point to Genesis 18 and not see the profound growth of Genesis 12 in our midst. When 50% of Israeli high school students say Arabs shouldn't have a right to vote, when 60% of Israelis say that it is legitimate to discriminate between Jews and Arabs in Israeli society, when 60% in the last Pew survey answered to the profoundly problematic question, but still answered that it is legitimate to expel Arabs, it's not clear what it meant, but 60%, even 30%. You see Genesis 12 taking hold here. And we have to fight it. And it is the fight for the future of this country. And I want to tell you, all the hospital in Haiti and the mission to Nepal are part of a good story that we have to, don't discount, let's build on it. The fact that the chief of staff, that every single officer of this soldier, every single one of them, said he has to be put on trial. Every single one of them. There wasn't one officer, not one in this whole, they didn't pick, a bunch. Here it is, there's a chain of commands in this unit serving in Hebron every single day with their lives under danger. There wasn't one single officer or commander in this soldier's chain of command which did not want to bring him to trial. That's a big deal. Now, our job is to recognize, not to stop there with self-congratulatory culture. It's to congratulate ourselves and now to say, how do we go on? And therefore, the critical issue is not the hospital in Haiti, but what's happening in South Tel Aviv. That's the test. And that's why I promised you last year, we started a daycare center of the Hartman Institute in South Tel Aviv. Because I said to you last year, this is not going to continue. We all went and we saw. And the problem is that it has to go in day after day after day. And so we're in the midst of a cultural war. We don't know which side has won. American Jews and Canadian Jews have an important role to play in that war. But we don't serve it by assuming that we won. Criticism is essential for moral growth. It's painful, but it gives at least room for what am I supposed to do tomorrow? And so, while there is much beauty here, that beauty needs to be magnified. And the fact that we're better than the Syrians was never a sign of great comfort for me. Yes, please, ma'am. And then in the back there, please.
My name's Elaine Ratner. I'm from La Jolla, California, and I love listening to you.
We could stop there. And I appreciate it very, very much.
I spent yesterday, before we started class here at 3, in Hebron. And you've spoken a great deal, intimated a great deal about the IDF and the Palestinians. But how does the settlers, how do the settlers desire for violence, desire for control of certain areas, that put the soldiers in very difficult positions?
Great question.
How do we deal with that in light of what you're talking about?
Thank you very, very much. One of the first things we have to do in our language is, just like we don't speak about the Jews, we have to officially stop speaking about the settlers and the soldiers. The settlers in Judea and Samaria, approximately 200,000 in number, depending on what we count. All have guns. All have automatic weapons. All of them. All of them have had, almost every single one of them, has had incidences that they experienced directly, not through second, third, of moments in which their lives were in danger. All of them live with fear. How many settlers have gotten up and mowed down Palestinian civilians in the last 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years? We know Baruch Goldstein. Tell me Baruch Goldstein 2. You don't have a Baruch Goldstein 2. Now please, they have the weapons. They have the ideology of love of land. They have Genesis 12. The settlers are an unbelievably law-abiding group of people. Now, that's when I speak about the settlers. Now, are there settlers who are not? The answer is clearly yes. But we even do disservice to the settlers when we don't. There is very big differences. There's a huge difference between some of the people, and again, not even all the people in Hebron. There are certain places which are flashpoints. Is that the term? There are places which attract people who have a much stronger Genesis 12 ideology and are willing to work on it and willing to implement it. There are. There are soldiers who are willing to implement it. There are people within the 67 borders there are people. I quoted 60% of Israeli students. These are in Haifa. This is Tel Aviv. This is not Kiryat Arba. But you're right. We have serious moral challenges. And I personally, while it's not what you're here for, we're going to talk about this much more next year. And the theme for next year is going to be 50 years after 67. Write that down. How do we think about that? I personally believe that the occupation is a profoundly corrupting experience. And it's not what I want. I don't want to occupy another people. I dream for a day where the Palestinians could live side by side with me in peace and security. I yearn for it. I do. And until that time, there are profound consequences. We're going to speak about this more next week. The occupation, things happen. It gets harder and harder. When 60% say not to try the soldier, something's happening. This is not good. But our job, I was just interviewed by David Suissa from the Los Angeles Jewish Times. He says, what's different about the Institute? And I said, I believe in hopeful criticism. Hopeful criticism is one in which after you criticize, there's still hope. I don't want to vilify. Doesn't do any of us any good. You end up vilifying those who shouldn't. You end up breaking partnerships with those who you don't need to break with. Genesis 18 and Genesis 12, which one will win is not a political debate. It shouldn't be contingent on whether you think Abu Mazen wants peace. It shouldn't be contingent on whether you worry whether Hamas will take over. Genesis 18 and Genesis 22 have nothing to do with the left-right-wing debate. We need to make sure in our language, even when we have, and we're not going to debate your politics. Could be you and I agree, could be you and I disagree. It just doesn't matter in the Hartman Institute. But this is a place where those on the left and those on the right say, let's talk about what being Jewish means. And let's understand that Genesis 12 is here and Genesis 18 is here. And how do we create a cultural war to make sure that Genesis 18 wins? And one of the ways you do that is by recognizing that Genesis 12 is here. And you recognize the reality under which people live. And then you create educational curriculum to enable Genesis 18 to win. And what you need and what I need is we need as many allies as we can. And we can't allow the political divides to deny us the allies who are with us, because Genesis 18 transcends politics. I hope. Yes, please, ma'am, in the back. Oh,
I'm concerned that liberal Israelis like yourself, people who feel like the occupation is corrupting Israel, help reinforce Genesis 12 by talking about terrorism and not the strength of the Israeli army and all its strength. That actually part of the narrative of Jews is that we are weak and that unwittingly we buy into that narrative. And that terrorism, you don't talk about the traffic accidents. You don't talk about people getting sick from, bad health care. It gets talked about terrorism. And that really you don't need to do it, but that you end up helping a narrative, you help reinforce a narrative which actually doesn't work at the ends that you want.
There is no doubt, and this is a really serious and difficult question you're asking me, and it's really good that it's here, because I don't know what to do about this. I'm not going to answer. I'm going to respond, but it's not an answer because I want it to stay with us. Whether there's BDS on campus or not is now a political debate. Whether Israel is suffering existential crises or not is now a political debate. Why should that be? Now, part of what's happening is that there are two emotional responses which have profound consequences. Some Jews feel emotionally that this is a very, very dangerous bad time. Some Jews in America feel that. Some Jews in Israel feel that. Other Jews feel that this is the most remarkable time in Jewish history. One of the things that I'm trying to do now, and I've made the same mistake, is I've taken a position on one of these two. And part of what I'm trying to say now is that I can't resolve that, and I don't want us to take a position on that, because what is the reality is very much dependent on what you experience. But our challenge today is that even in the midst of terror, even in the midst of danger, we still have to be Genesis 18. I appreciate that, and that's why I'm not in politics. And I'm not. That's why I'm not. That's why I said to you, your question is great. Now, can we? This is like I'm trying. Can we step away from that? Like, is the Iranian deal good for Israel or bad for Israel? What's the answer? You think we're going to agree on that here? Have any one of you had an opinion that changed? No one. Whenever you encounter opinions that nobody changes, it's time to stop having the debate. Each one should act politically in accordance with their conscience. Great. That's what's lovely about a democracy. Everybody should support and do what they think. I'm with you. But now can we? And I know politically we're using this discourse. That this is one of the reasons why I appreciate Boogie Ya'alon so much. And I appreciate and love the President of Israel, Rivlin, is that some of the leading voices for Genesis 18 in this country today are coming from the political right. The people on the political left, the far left, speak 18 merits because they're stuck at their 5%, they're never going to go up. They're not, they're at 5. Anybody else who actually wants to win an election now in Israel, and you could take all the political left, they don't speak in terms of Genesis 18 because they're afraid that if I speak Genesis 18, I'm going to lose the center. So can we create a space where we move out of that? And I know each side's going to use it. By the way, the left also uses the terror. This is like part of the story. Left and right, it's just, there's a terrorist act, the right accuses the left accuses the right. Everybody, it's like we have a bigger issue. There's something really important going on now in Jewish identity, ladies and gentlemen, and we can't allow the political debate to define it. We have a battle now over our soul. Could Israel really in the long term win if Genesis 18, the old core Zionist ideas of being an exemplary country don't define what this country is about? Where look what you where Haiti, this is who we want to be. Look at this, your story. That's why I don't want to criticize you. I want to embrace. I want more. I want more. Could Israel win without that? Will our soldiers have what to fight for? So we're trying. Could we create this perennial existential crisis? It's not going to be enough. Could we send you to Auschwitz over? And how many times can I send a soldier to Auschwitz to motivate them? Or somewhere along the line, am I going to have to motivate them to say that I want you to fight because there's something special that we want to create here? And that Israel is not trying to survive in the Middle East by becoming a Middle East phenomena. We're going to survive in the Middle East by being Jews, by being Israel, by being Genesis 18. I'm with you. How do we stop doing that? And I know there are people who are. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I know. It's tough. But we need all of us, both on the left and the right, to take a higher ground and to lay claim to a Jewish discourse which is at the core of who we ought to be. And it's a difficult time right now. And I want you to know, when Israel goes Genesis 12, and even, by the way, when Israel doesn't go Genesis 12, when an Israeli politician speaks Genesis 12 language and a certain survey quotes Genesis 12 ideology, another 20,000 American Jews walk away from Israel. Just walk away and say, that's it. They've just walked away. We're at a place right now where our margin of error is small. We're in an era where it's not that like where people are with us regardless. They're right here. And they're going to decide whether I'm going to continue or not continue. And therefore, we have to fight very clearly for this. And I know, how do we do that by avoiding that conversation is a major issue. Last one, and then we'll conclude, please. Again, I've now had 4, each one of the questions were questions that anybody who gives a lecture should be blessed by. So it's like every one of them was just like so thought, it was just kol hakavod to you. Really, I'm having nachas from you. Now that I'm a grandfather, I shep nachas from lots of people. So I'm kvelling. Look at a question that our student asked. This connects back to some of the things that Yehuda was saying yesterday. I'm not sure, you're right. And one of the great paradoxes is that Genesis 18 by itself tends to implode on itself. When you start with light unto the nations and you embrace the world, you end up feeling uncomfortable with the particular mission of embracing the world. And I don't want to say you need a balance between Genesis and 12 and 18 because it's not true. Genesis 18 unto itself speaks about the importance of particularity for the sake of moral excellence. And part of the process of North American Jewry, including the lack of ethnicity, but even more so, the embracing of Tikkun Olam as the primary Jewish mitzvah, leads to a process where particularity itself becomes problematic. I know that's where your children are. I don't know if there's something, there is no one thing I could say. I do believe, however, that Jewish survival, and I don't mean by that just continuity in numbers. I mean Jewish survival, the survival of a people who stand and have brought some of the best ideas to the world. A people who are supposed to walk in the way of Abraham by doing what is just and right, and to fight justice and to fight any injustice and to fight any unrighteousness. That if you are going to be the enemy of justice, you're going to be the enemy of the Jew. And that if you're going to get up in America and you're going to try to create hatred of others, you're going to find the Jewish community against you. And that our people are going to fight discrimination wherever that is, because we are commanded to be responsible. And when I am Abraham's child, not Abraham's genetic child, but I am walking in the way of Abraham. I do not know if we could do that without the category of chosenness. I don't know. I don't know if we could do that, and I know without the category of exceptionalism or exceptionality. I don't know, and here, how do we develop a language of particularity which doesn't mean superiority? What does it mean that I want to be exceptional, but it doesn't mean I want to I want to be exceptional, and I hope I lose. Because I hope there's people more exceptional. I want a competition between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I want competition between Americans and Canadians and Brits and Frenchmen and Germans and Israelis and Palestinians and Syrians. Who has the best political system? Who's the kindest to refugees? I want that. Let that be the competition. But that means there has to be a sense of mission. There has to be a sense of a particular identity. I am very fearful that in the name of moral responsibility, we are embracing a universal identity which in the end is going to undermine universal responsibility. I am a believer in particularity. The Jewish people are believers in it. And I realize there is a serious challenge. And I know it's not enough just to change the words that I sing in Kiddush. But how do we reclaim the dignity of the particular? I have an identity. And that identity means that I stand for something great. I'm not inherently better than anybody. And I'm not more important. But I am. And I am means that not merely I exist, I am somebody who stands for certain important principles. And as long as I remain I, those principles have a home. And how do we bring that I, or that collective we, to return and to be integral to a Jewish identity which clearly feels responsible to the world, is, I believe, a great challenge and a great responsibility of all of us. And I wish us tremendous luck. Thank you very, very much.